Welcome to Bed Crime Stories Podcast. I'm your host, T. To my loyal followers, I send you wishes for a great day. To anyone new here, a warm welcome. Let me just ask that if you find you enjoyed this video, please smash that like button and consider subscribing. And if you want to support my work, please consider a Patreon subscription. Or if you listen to my podcast on Spotify under Carnage Street, consider a membership over there. I'll leave links to both in the description. Now, let's dig in. The New York prosecutor handling the Long Island serialist case visited suspect Rex Heuermann's house this morning, Tuesday, July 25th, 2023. The officials are saying that the police have concluded their search of the property. Tuesday marks the 12th day of the search. Although the examiners will be leaving, there will still be a law enforcement presence there, and the police are putting cameras up on the block too. They don't want anyone getting into the house, and they don't want gawkers who've come on foot and by way of vehicle to keep visiting the now notorious abode. They're saying they will be placing no standing signs outside the property, and they're going to issue $150 tickets to drivers who loiter in the road to view the home. So everybody get away from that red house. Suffolk County District Attorney Rex Heuermann said, quote, "The evidence doesn't point one way or the other that someone was killed in the house. We've obtained a massive amount of material that has to be cataloged and analyzed," end quote. Tierney also said that the investigators were looking for tangible items of evidence, as well as trace evidence, including blood and DNA and hair fibers. Per Tierney, no human remains were located at the home, so no bodies buried in the backyard, at least that the investigators are aware of. They are digging through the soil looking for trace evidence. Alleged serialist Rex Heuermann, who is accused of doing in 3 of the Gilgo Four and is a prime suspect in the 4th victim's death, it could be argued, had the ultimate man cave. Well, at least for a serialist. Heuermann, who is presumed innocent, had that large walk-in vault with a heavy metal door in the basement of his family home in Massapequa Park, Long Island, a house that he grew up in and later bought from his now 93-year-old mother, Dolores. An interior designer friend of Heuermann's has said he was adamant that she could not enter that vault when he asked her to measure all the rooms in his house for a possible remodeling job. She found Heuermann's strong reaction to her request very strange at the time. Items found inside the walk-in vault include a stockpile of weapons. Estimates on how many range from 200 to 300. It also sounds like that creepy life-size doll of a blonde child inside a glass display case was found inside the vault. According to a source who spoke to CNN, the doll was definitely not found in the children's rooms. We also saw investigators remove what looked to be either a painting or a drawing of a bruised woman's face. Some say the woman's face resembles that of an escort who went missing in Las Vegas, a place Heuermann owns a timeshare condo. I'm assuming that if this disturbed portrait was displayed anywhere in that house, it would have been in the vault. It's hard to believe that Heuermann's wife and children would have been okay with that image on the wall of, say, the living room. Although, according to a neighbor who used to mow their lawn, 4 coconuts, don't laugh out loud, this is for real, with carved faces on them, oh my god, that's so scary, were on display in the home. And this guy said they resembled shrunken heads, and they were creepy. Unsubstantiated rumors are also floating around that the police believe at least one victim may have been harmed inside the home. But we know that so far, the police aren't sure yet if they have or don't have the evidence to prove this. It would make sense for Heuermann to have harmed some of his victims at that house, and I'll tell you why. I heard a former NYPD commissioner on CNN say that he and his colleagues have seen serialists create, quote, operating environments within their homes because it offers control and privacy. The commissioner said, in this case, the investigators don't yet know this, but why they suspect this is a strong possibility is down to two reasons. One, the tracking of 3 of the victims' cell phones appears to show them ending up right in the Massapequa Park area before never being heard from again. And the second reason is that in all 4 of the Gilgo Beach victims' cases, when those 4 victims disappeared, coincided with periods when Rex Heuermann's wife and children were out of town and away from the house. What better place to commit a crime like this if the family is out of town? First, it gives you time to clean up the crime scene before anyone can spot anything. Second, you don't have to transport the materials you're going to need to commit the crime. Criminals of this ilk are known to travel with what are called kill kits. If you're in your own space at home, you're likely to have all the stuff you need readily available, things like rope and weapons. Third, no one is likely to hear a victim scream out in an empty house in the late night and early morning hours, especially behind a heavy metal door inside a vault. One of Heuermann's former co-workers told the New York Post that the architect took time off to install the concrete-lined room. The co-worker is quoted as saying this, "It's not just a hidden room, it's a serious vault. It had a huge, heavy-duty safe door. He went and poured new concrete walls, a massive amount of concrete, to encase this room. It was maybe 2 or 3 feet thick," end quote. In such a thick-walled concrete vault, the perpetrator would feel totally in control of the environment, and his victim would not. We know from leaked images of a list of items taken from the home that rope and keys to handcuffs were located. It seems like a no-brainer to assume that those were used in the commission of the crimes if Heuermann really is the perpetrator. I have this horrible image of these young women realizing at some point after meeting up with this guy that they should not have traveled to his turf in Massapequa Park, of them suddenly noticing an emotionless look glaze over his eyes, realizing that this trick is the demented one that everyone warned you about and whom you feared, but reassured yourself the odds were against you running into. This whack job not only wants to essay you, he also wants to use ropes, tape, and belts to tie your wrists and ankles, and to render you as vulnerable as possible. Maybe at first he coaxes you into allowing him to have some fun with these restraints, but once the dude has you unable to fight or flee, you see he ain't playing no more. He's certifiably twisted, and he wants to inflict bruises on you and see you cry. And you can tell from the space you're in his basement, that your screams aren't going to reach beyond those walls. It's the stuff of nightmares and also a scene out of Silence of the Lambs. According to the commissioner, many serialists have an innate ability to compartmentalize their lives, to keep the family man version of themselves separate from the psycho who is constantly trawling for his next victim and who can easily assume fake identities in emails and on burner phones to avoid detection. Over the years, he's learned how to seamlessly transition from one persona to the other. From Rex Heuermann's interview with that French guy from Bonjour TV, we can see that he's developed some pretty good social skills, although there are signs in that interview that this man isn't as socially adept as he'd like to be. He drones on for way too long about his rather boring work looking up old building codes. He barely acknowledges the interviewer's laughter likely elicited by the discomfort of having to hear Heuermann's long monologue and feel his odd reactions. The interviewer also lets out a chuckle when Heuermann answers his question about what tool of the trade he'd be if he could pick one. Heuermann replies that he'd like to be a hammer, an object that has the capability of doing a person in and also of scaring someone into compliance. But enough about Rex Heuermann for the moment. Moving on to the Gilgo Four and the circumstances surrounding their disappearances. The four young women are known as the Gilgo Four because of where their bodies were found clustered together in a marsh along Gilgo Beach in Long Island back in December 2010. All four had been working as escorts before they vanished and were later found bound and deceased inside burlap sacks. All four were also petite with hazel green eyes, and they went missing between 2007 and 2010. They are 25-year-old Maureen Brainerd Barnes, 24-year-old Melissa Bartholomew, 22-year-old Megan Waterman, and 27-year-old Amber Costello. These young women were more than just escorts. They were human beings who, for one reason or another, needed cash, and the only way they saw to getting it, at least at that point in their lives, was through the dangerous work of being an escort. The sad fact is that as soon as they each went missing, some of the police officers alerted relegated them to only being seen as prostitutes, and in one case, an officer even told the victim's family that they weren't going to assign a detective to look into the disappearance of an escort. The person who harmed the four women likely counted on them being people that no one would notice were missing or would care about. That's one thing he got wrong. All four women remained close to their families while they were working as escorts. So when they went missing, their loved ones noticed. The irony about these four women being found is that they were only discovered along Gilgo Beach when the authorities were searching for a fifth missing young lady, Shannon Gilbert. The Suffolk County Police were aware of Gilbert's last known location near Oak Beach, a stone's throw away from Gilgo Beach. Thus, they had this general area in Long Island that needed a thorough grid search. As searchers were combing through the thick and tangled brush, they eventually came across a set of female remains. Believing them to be Shannon Gilbert, the police were utterly shocked to learn they belonged to another missing woman, 24-year-old Melissa Bartholomew, who disappeared on July 12th of 2009. The police keep scouring the southern shore for Shannon Gilbert, and 2 days after finding the first set of remains, they come across 3 more, none of which belongs to Shannon Gilbert. Now the authorities realize they have a serialist on their hands, and he's still on the loose and using Gilgo Beach as his personal dumping ground. The first of the Gilgo Four victims to go missing was 25-year-old Maureen Brainerd Barnes, who disappeared on July 9th of 2007. Before I tell you the details of her disappearance, let me paint a brief portrait of who she was. Maureen was born on July 14th of 1982 and grew up in Groton, Connecticut. According to her younger sister, Melissa, Maureen was a free spirit, artistic, daring, intelligent, and she often clashed with their mother. At 17, Maureen became a mother herself. She would go on to have a second child. To support herself and her kids, Maureen, who did not have a driver's license or a college degree, took jobs that weren't necessarily well-paying. She worked for a time as a blackjack dealer at Foxwoods Resort Casino, then as a clerk at ShopRite, later as a telemarketer. At the time of her disappearance in July of 2007, and unbeknownst to her little sister Melissa, Maureen and her kids, a son and a daughter, are about to be evicted from their rental home. The salary from Maureen's telemarketing job isn't enough to both feed and shelter her family. Under a ton of pressure to come up with the rent, and also dealing with an ugly battle with an ex over custody of one of her kids, Maureen and a friend of hers named Sarah Carnes from the telemarketing firm where they both work decide to advertise themselves on Craigslist as escorts. They do this for a period of about 6 months before Maureen goes missing. On the weekend Maureen was last heard from, she and Sarah find themselves temporarily banned from Craigslist. According to Sarah, because of this, they decide to spend the weekend in New York City getting better photos taken for their escort ads. So on July 6th, they hop on an Amtrak train from New London, Connecticut, and they travel to Grand Central Terminal in New York City. Maureen fibs to her sister Melissa, telling her she's going to the city for a modeling gig. Once in the Big Apple, the petite and hazel-eyed Maureen, along with her brunette friend Sarah, get those photos taken. Then, with their glamorous makeup and hairdos still looking perfect, they decide to stroll around Times Square. I'm thinking they maybe were looking for potential clients. Some point that weekend, Sarah decides to return home early, but Maureen, apparently wanting to make more money, opts to stay in the city. Per Sarah, Maureen had regular clients that she saw there and likely was able to hook up with some of them over that weekend. Maureen calls her sister Melissa from Penn Station at 11:30 p.m. on the night of Sunday, July 8th. Melissa can hear the motion of the trains in the background as Maureen speaks. Melissa later said that she didn't think Maureen felt she was in any danger at the time of this final phone call. Everything seemed normal. Maureen tells Melissa that she'll see her the next morning and that she loves her. According to Melissa, it was right after that call that her sister seemed to go poof and disappear forever. But I also read that Maureen possibly spoke to her friend Sarah the day after her call with Melissa. According to another article about the case, Maureen's last communication may have been at 11:43 p.m. on Monday, July 9th with Sarah. Per Sarah, although Maureen had been working out of motel rooms on the night of July 9th, she tells Sarah that she's going to meet someone outside the motel at a different location. So I'm wondering if Maureen ran into Rex Heuermann, who has been named the prime suspect in her death, perhaps at Penn Station, or if he was one of her regular clients. One thing is for certain, the last ping on Maureen's phone was in Long Island. So somehow she traveled from Penn Station in New York City to Long Island. When Maureen fails to return home to Norwich, Melissa knows something is wrong. So on July 14th, 5 days after her last call with Maureen, Melissa calls the police in both Norwich and New York City and says her sister went to the city and never came home. Someone has to have her. This isn't normal for my sister. But the cops aren't quick to jump up and help. They say something to the effect of, well, maybe your sister doesn't care about her kids anymore, which is so infuriating. Like, it's their job to help when someone goes missing, but for whatever reason, be it the fact that Maureen was working as an escort, or maybe that some of these officers working in New York City are jaded and maybe overworked, they end up blowing off Melissa's concern. When the police fail to take any action, the family starts looking for Maureen themselves. Melissa, who was interviewed by Erin Moriarty of 48 Hours said of that search, quote, "My husband and my brother got on their motorcycles and actually took Maureen's picture with them and drove down to Manhattan. They walked around the whole area asking people if they'd ever seen her. No one saw her. No one knew her. My brother came back and was like, 'It's a different world out there. No one wants to know you. No one cares.'" End quote. That really paints a vivid picture of what it's like when an adult family member working as an escort goes missing in a hardened place like New York City. 3 painful years go by and Maureen never returns. And all that time, Melissa does nothing but think about her sister. Then on December 13th of 2010, as the police are searching for Shannon Gilbert, they come upon Maureen's remains along Gilgo Beach. Once the remains are identified, police officers turn up at Melissa's house to break the tragic news. Despite Maureen being found, the family will remain without answers for another 13 years. It's not until 2023 that the authorities say they believe a 59-year-old architect named Rex Heuermann is the prime suspect in Maureen's disappearance. Note that Maureen is not yet among the 3 victims for whom Rex Heuermann has been charged, but the police have hinted that they hope to soon charge him with Maureen's death. The second of the Gilgo Four to vanish is 24-year-old Melissa Bartholomew. Don't confuse Melissa Bartholomew with Maureen Brainerd Barnes' sister, Melissa. We actually have 2 Melissas in this bed crime story. After graduating from high school, Melissa Bartholomew goes to beauty school in the small town she grew up in near Buffalo. After beauty school, she decides to move to New York City to pursue work as a hairdresser. Melissa, who has a beautiful voice, also dreams of working as an actress and performer. Having her young daughter move to the Big Apple terrifies Melissa's mother, Lynn. But Melissa is of legal age and Lynn can't stop her. But instead of finding the dream job as a hairdresser or actress, Melissa ends up living in an apartment in the Bronx, and she begins working as an escort. Lynn and Melissa talk every day, although Melissa is keeping secrets from her mother. In mid-July of 2009, so approximately 2 years after Maureen Brainerd Barnes vanished, after not hearing from Melissa for several days, Lynn panics. She starts thinking, well, maybe Melissa got hurt, and she's in the hospital, unable to call me. So Lynn and her fiance pull out the phone book and they start calling every hospital in the area. Lynn also calls the New York Police Department to file a missing persons report. But the cops treat Lynn and her concerns just like they treated those of Maureen's sister. They aren't interested in doing anything. The cops are like, your daughter's 24, she's not on psych meds, she's not missing, she's where she wants to be. But Lynn, knowing something is wrong, keeps calling the cops for 3 consecutive days. Lynn even has her attorney call the police, and even the attorney can't get these officers to act. The cops are like, she's a hooker. We're not going to assign a detective to this. So a week goes by, and this is when things get even more worrisome for the Bartholomew family. Melissa's 15-year-old sister, Amanda, hears her cell phone ring. She looks at the screen and sees it's a call from Melissa's phone. Overjoyed to see Melissa's name on the screen, Amanda answers and says something like, "Oh my God, Melissa, thank God you're okay. We were so worried." But instead of hearing Melissa's voice, Amanda hears a man speaking. Whoever the guy is, he's talking in a very controlled and soft-spoken manner. The man says, "Oh, this isn't Melissa." He then begins to toy with Amanda. He describes what she looks like, where she lives, and he threatens her. Worst of all, he recounts in detail and explicit language all the horrible things that he did to her big sister Melissa. This man will go on to call Amanda a total of 7 times, and her mother Lynn 1 time. And while the Bartholomews alert the police to this creepy caller, and the cops are able to trace the calls, they're only able to trace them to a handful of very busy places in Midtown Manhattan. One is near the Port Authority, another is by the Empire State Building, and a third is to Times Square. All of these places are teeming with people when the calls come in. The caller also hangs up before police officers can rush over to those locations. Amanda leads the police to believe the caller is likely a white male in his late 20s or 30s. The last time this demonic caller dials up Amanda is on August 26, 2009. By now, Big Sis Melissa has been missing for a month and a half. The caller says, "Do you know what I did to your sister?" Amanda replies, "No." He then matter-of-factly states, "Well, I killed her." Amanda and Lynn and the rest of the family are crushed. The game is over. Any hope of getting Melissa back alive is dashed. During the 8 phone calls to Amanda and her mother, the sicko on the other end of the line was getting off on causing them emotional distress and fear. Part of the rush of his dark deeds is inflicting pain on the families of his victims. The magnitude of this guy's evil is beyond comprehension. The family waits for nearly a year before getting an answer to Melissa's whereabouts. Melissa's remains, like those of Maureen Brainerd Barnes, are found off Ocean Parkway near Gilgo Beach on December 11th of 2010. Melissa's remains are the first remains to be located. Like Maureen, Melissa is found in a burlap sack. Her family, like Maureen, now know their loved one is deceased and not coming back, but they don't know who's responsible. It's not until 2023 that they are also told that architect Rex Heuermann is, allegedly, the person who took Melissa's life in 2009. Tragically, Melissa's sister Amanda had to live in fear from 2009 until 2023, that creepy male caller might turn up one day and harm her. The psychological impact of such extended fear and of learning your sister was done in by a demented serialist, one can only imagine. Prayers go out to Amanda. The third member of the Gilgo Four to go missing is young mother Megan Waterman, who vanishes on the night of June 6 of 2010, so roughly 11 months after Melissa Bartholomew went missing. 22-year-old Megan is devoted to her 3-year-old daughter Lily, and her family will later say she lived for that little girl. When Lily is interviewed years later by Erin Moriarty, she alleges that her mother's boyfriend, and who I assume to be her father, used DV on both her as a baby and a child and on her mother. It is this boyfriend who allegedly forces Megan into this escort work. Megan is last seen leaving a Holiday Inn Express on Long Island. Megan, like Maureen, doesn't follow her normal safety protocols on this night. Typically, she has her boyfriend accompany her on her escort calls, but for some reason on that June evening, Megan headed out into the darkness alone to meet up with a client her boyfriend will later tell the police he doesn't know by name and has never seen. Back at home, Lily is with family and waiting for her mother to return. Megan's routine is to call home every day like clockwork, so when she stops calling, her family knows something is wrong. This is why the family is so sure that June 6th of 2010 is exactly when Megan vanished. It will be 6 months before Megan's family finds out her whereabouts. On December 13th of 2010, Megan's remains are found in a burlap sack near Gilgo Beach. After that, 13 years go by for the family before they get any answers. And in 2023, they find out that the police believe Rex Heuermann is the monster who harmed Megan. The last of the Gilgo Four victims to go missing is 27-year-old Amber Costello. She vanishes on the night of September 2nd, 2010, so just about 3 months after Megan Waterman. Amber, like the other 3 members of the Gilgo Four, works as an occasional escort. For Amber, this demeaning work is done so that she can procure the illicit substances she's addicted to. Per her roommate, Dave Schaller, Amber's ashamed of what she's become, but seemingly powerless to stop the madness. The day before Amber goes off the grid forever, Dave comes home to find a tall, towering, Frankenstein-like figure with an empty gaze threatening Amber. The man's dark green first-generation Chevy Avalanche truck is parked in the driveway. Amber is locked in the bathroom, and this ogre-like stranger is standing outside the door, threatening her. Schaller and the very large man come to blows. Eventually, the hulking intruder leaves the residence and flees in that dark green truck. Dave Schaller gets a good look at both the tall man and his green truck. Later that same day, the same man texts Amber saying that it wasn't very nice what she did to him. He's implying that she and Dave Schaller have deliberately gotten him to pay for her services without delivering them. He feels he's been scammed. The man then asked Amber for a rain check, and it would appear that he comes back to Amber's neighborhood the next night to cash it in. That next night, Dave walks Amber out the front door. She hugs and kisses him. Amber strangely leaves without her phone or her purse. Per Dave, this guy has promised her $1,500 for her services, which is 6 times her going rate. Whatever the guy said, it got Amber out of the safety of her home. Dave said he told Amber to be safe before she walked away. My thoughts are that this very tall man came back to make Amber pay for what perceived as a scam the night before, as in pay with her life. Perhaps she didn't plan on straying too far from her home that night, and maybe that's why she left without her phone and purse. Maybe this tall man suddenly pulled up and shoved her into his Chevy before taking off. Perhaps he lured her inside the vehicle for what he maybe said would be a short in the car service. We'll never know for sure unless the perpetrator decides to fess up and tell the truth, which is unlikely. Amber's remains would be found just 3 months later on December 13th of 2010 in those same marshes near Gilgo Beach. She too was inside a burlap sack. Dave said that when the police came to tell him that Amber was dead, he knew immediately who did it. He described the tall man to them in great detail, and he also was able to describe that Chevy Avalanche he was driving. This is why Dave Schaller wonders why it took 13 years for the police to connect Rex Heuermann with that vehicle and with Amber's death. So those are the 4 victims who've come to be known as the Gilgo Four. The person who harmed them likely believed no one would notice them missing and no one would care. If that was Rex Heuermann, then the joke's on him. So far as he lies on his jailhouse bunk with his back to the wall, no one has been to visit him except his attorney. His family, it would appear, after learning what he's been accused of, have decided maybe that he's not worth caring about. Until the next time on Bed Crime Stories. Hey, do me a favor, smash that like button, subscribe to my channel, and I'll see you next time.